An unprecedented and concerning geopolitical shift is taking place in 2025. The United States has begun to more overtly tighten its restrictions on Asian countries through sweeping visa restrictions and diplomatic freezes, a move that's triggering global outrage. The message to millions of people across Asia is clear: you are no longer welcome. This report will delve into 10 Asian countries that are now facing unprecedented cold shoulders from the U.S. Some are rivals, while others were once considered partners. All of them are now part of a list that America is reluctant to discuss. The number 1 country on this list is particularly shocking. Number 10. North Korea. North Korea's strained relationship with the U.S. is not new. However, in 2025, tensions escalated into outright exclusion. Following a new round of U.S. sanctions, Washington imposed a complete freeze on visa processing for North Korean citizens. This included not only government officials but also humanitarian workers and students. According to a statement from the Korean Central News Agency, KCNA, Pyongyang accused the U.S. of sabotaging peace opportunities and promoting double standards. In retaliation, North Korea declared that all American diplomats and aid organizations operating within the country would be expelled. This hard-line stance has effectively erased what little civilian or educational contact remained between the two nations. The message from Washington is that engagement is off the table. Experts say the risk of escalation is at its highest since the collapse of the Trump-Kim summit era. North Korea is no longer just isolated by choice, it is now being cut off by design. Number 9. Afghanistan. Once a central partner in America's longest war, Afghanistan now finds itself at the cold edge of U.S. immigration and diplomatic policy. In 2025, the U.S. imposed strict visa restrictions on Afghan officials, citing corruption, human rights concerns, and national security risks. However, for thousands of Afghan families hoping for a fresh start in America, the message felt far more personal. A January 2025 report from Tolo News revealed that Afghans applying for U.S. visas, even those who once worked with American forces, are facing indefinite delays, mass denials, and in some cases, outright bans. While the Trump administration maintains the policy targets only a specific group of political elites, it is ordinary Afghans who are paying the price. The Afghan government responded with sharp criticism, accusing the U.S. of abandoning its moral responsibility. As violence and regional instability grow, Afghan citizens trying to flee persecution are left in limbo. A former interpreter interviewed by Tolo News stated, "They used us when it suited them, now we're not welcome." This shift has left deep scars, both diplomatic and personal. Number 8. Russia. While Russia is not traditionally considered part of Asia in the Western imagination, its massive Asian territory and regional influence make its place on this list undeniable. In 2025, U.S.-Russia relations are colder than ever. Following Moscow's renewed aggression in Eastern Europe and alleged cyber interference in U.S. infrastructure, the U.S. government has expanded its visa bans to include dozens of Russian officials, business elites, and their families. The fallout has gone far beyond government circles. Ordinary Russian citizens now face increased scrutiny, longer wait times, and widespread visa denials when trying to enter the U.S. Travel agencies in Moscow report a 61% drop in U.S.-bound bookings compared to early 2024. American universities, once popular among Russian students, are seeing record-level withdrawals and admission declines. According to a report from RT, even scientific and academic exchanges have been quietly frozen. While Washington says these measures are necessary for national security, Russian media has dubbed it a new Iron Curtain for millions of Russians hoping to travel, study, or reconnect with family in America. The door is closing and may not reopen anytime soon. Number 7. Myanmar. The U.S. has all but slammed the door shut on Myanmar in recent years, and 2025 made it official. Following the 2021 military coup and continued human rights abuses, Washington expanded its sanctions targeting Myanmar's military junta leaders, state enterprises, and defense companies. The crackdown has not stopped there. In 2025, visa restrictions tightened even further, with U.S. immigration officials flagging most Myanmar applicants for extensive background checks, effectively freezing approval rates. The message is clear. Myanmar's military-led government has crossed a line. Humanitarian organizations have also reported delays in visas for aid workers, a chilling signal that even neutral actors from Myanmar face increasing suspicion. Myanmar's inclusion on the U.S. Treasury's sanctions list has also spooked banks and travel services, making it nearly impossible for ordinary citizens to get flights, accommodations, or transactions approved for U.S. travel. Myanmar has now become a cautionary tale of what happens when diplomatic bridges collapse. Number 6. Pakistan. Tensions between the U.S. and Pakistan have always run hot and cold, but in 2025, they hit a new low. The Trump administration enacted targeted visa restrictions against Pakistani officials, citing concerns over democratic backsliding, judicial suppression, and alleged support for extremist networks. Islamabad did not take the news lightly, with Pakistani leaders calling the move unjustified and politically motivated. While the sanctions were focused on government officials, the ripple effects quickly spread to civilians. U.S. student visas for Pakistani nationals dropped by 36% compared to the previous year. Business travel approvals were down nearly 42%, according to consular records. This has caused widespread frustration in Pakistan's tech and academic sectors, which rely heavily on U.S. collaboration. To make matters worse, social media campaigns in Pakistan calling for reciprocal travel bans have gained traction, turning an already tense situation into a tit-for-tat standoff. Flights to major U.S. cities from Islamabad and Lahore have seen increased cancellations and empty seats, not due to capacity issues but because of disillusionment. Pakistan may not be officially banned yet, but it is already feeling the squeeze of a diplomatic freeze. Number 5. South Korea. No one expected to see South Korea on this list. It is a longtime U.S. ally, tech partner, and cultural bridge between East and West. But in 2025, even Seoul is not safe from America's shifting immigration and security policies. The controversy erupted when a leaked memo from the U.S. Department of Homeland Security labeled South Korea as a visa integrity risk zone, following a sharp rise in overstays from tech sector employees. Despite Seoul's strong objections, the U.S. quietly added new administrative delays and background checks on South Korean work visa applicants. The reaction was swift. South Korea's Ministry of Foreign Affairs publicly denounced the move, calling it a breach of trust. Tech giants like Samsung and Hyundai, both with significant U.S. operations, warned of paused relocations and joint projects. A poll by the Korea Herald found that 68% of South Koreans viewed the visa clampdown as a political insult rather than a policy decision. The damage is not just diplomatic. South Korean student enrollment at U.S. universities dropped 22% year-over-year, and several cultural exchange programs have been suspended. If the U.S. can turn cold toward a nation it once hailed as a model ally, what does that say to the rest of Asia? Number 4. China. China's strained relationship with the U.S. is nothing new, but in 2025, it took a darker, more personal turn. The U.S. State Department imposed sweeping visa restrictions on Chinese officials, scholars, and tech executives in retaliation for alleged espionage and human rights violations. Beijing hit back, slamming the restrictions as Cold War tactics. Chinese news outlets warned citizens against studying in or traveling to the U.S., citing arbitrary detentions and rising anti-Asian hate crimes. The number of Chinese students in the U.S. fell by over 30% within just one academic year. Tourism has collapsed, and flights between Beijing and New York, once packed year-round, are now running at half capacity. Major U.S. retailers and universities are reporting revenue losses tied directly to the Chinese exodus. It goes deeper, as American tech companies that once relied on Chinese partners for hardware supply and R&D are watching deals dry up. While Washington may claim it is a matter of national security, to many in China, it is a declaration that they are no longer welcome. This is not just a diplomatic freeze, it is an economic and cultural decoupling in real time. Number 3. Bangladesh. Bangladesh may not be the first country that comes to mind when discussing U.S. foreign policy flashpoints, but in 2025, it has become a surprisingly volatile hotspot. The Trump administration has imposed targeted visa restrictions on key Bangladeshi political and security officials, citing a worrying pattern of human rights violations, including the suppression of opposition voices and press freedom in the wake of the 2024 elections. For a country once seen as a dependable ally in South Asia, this sudden freeze has sent diplomatic shockwaves through both Washington and Dhaka. The response from Bangladesh was anything but quiet. The government publicly denounced the U.S. action, calling it a blatant interference in domestic affairs. Crowds flooded the streets of Dhaka, chanting anti-American slogans and waving signs that read, "Hands off Bangladesh," and "No to double standards." At the heart of the uproar lies a growing belief among many Bangladeshis that the U.S. applies its democracy and human rights rhetoric selectively, turning a blind eye when convenient but pouncing when politically advantageous. The fallout is not just symbolic. Bilateral trade is taking a hit, especially in the textile sector, which had long been a pillar of cooperation. American retailers once reliant on Bangladeshi garment exports are reportedly pausing contracts, citing regulatory uncertainty. Number 2. India. India and the U.S. have long referred to each other as natural partners, bonded by democratic values and mutual geopolitical interests. But that narrative is crumbling fast. In a shocking development, President Trump grouped India with countries he labeled as xenophobic, sparking outrage across the Indian political spectrum. For a nation that prides itself on its pluralistic identity and democratic resilience, the comparison stung deeply. The Indian government wasted no time in hitting back. Officials from Prime Minister Modi's administration condemned the remarks as unfounded, offensive, and diplomatically irresponsible. Foreign Minister Subramanyam Jaishankar took to international forums to defend India's democratic integrity. Indian media exploded with commentary, with prominent news anchors and columnists questioning whether Washington had ever respected India as a sovereign equal or merely viewed it as a pawn in its rivalry with China. But this was not just rhetorical sparring, concrete policy shifts followed. Indian immigration applicants, particularly students and skilled workers, began facing increased scrutiny at U.S. embassies. In some cities, rejection rates have more than doubled compared to 2023. American universities are already reporting a sharp decline in Indian student applications, a demographic that has historically formed the largest share of international enrollees. Indian tech giants are also rethinking their expansion strategies, increasingly favoring Europe, Southeast Asia, and Australia over the US. Online, the backlash is gaining momentum. Hashtags like #BoycottUSA, #RespectIndia, and #NoVisa for Indians have trended on Indian social media, fueled by popular influencers and even some members of parliament. Meanwhile, Indian consumers are calling for boycotts of American brands, from fast food chains to streaming services. U.S. businesses operating in India are growing nervous, with several reportedly pausing ad campaigns to avoid backlash. Number 1. Japan. No one expected Japan to land here, a key ally and a longtime partner. And yet, in 2025, even Japan is finding itself entangled in tensions with the U.S., not over war, trade, or military strategy, but over something far more symbolic: words. President Trump's comments labeling Japan as xenophobic ignited a firestorm. For a country so often praised for its measured diplomacy, Japan's response was swift and firm. Japanese officials did not merely express disappointment, they issued formal rebukes, stating that the president's comments were a deep mischaracterization of Japan's culturally grounded immigration stance. Prime Minister Fumio Kishida stood before national media, emphasizing Japan's sovereign right to manage its borders according to domestic consensus, not foreign pressure. This sentiment echoed widely across Japanese society, igniting a wave of disapproval from citizens who felt unfairly targeted. The repercussions have gone well beyond press conferences. A recent Mainichi Shimbun poll revealed that 52% of Japanese citizens now view the U.S. less favorably than they did just a year ago, the steepest year-over-year drop in over a decade. Online travel communities began trending hashtags discouraging trips to the US, while cultural influencers and TV pundits criticized what they saw as Washington's arrogance. Meanwhile, some of Japan's most promising tech firms are re-evaluating collaborations with American partners, eyeing alternative hubs in Europe and Southeast Asia. What once felt like an unbreakable alliance now seems fragile. The cracks are visible not in military treaties, but in mutual respect and public sentiment. When one of your closest allies starts to question your values, it sends a chilling signal to the rest of the world. This list is not about enemies, it is about allies and trusted partners. These are nations that once stood shoulder to shoulder with the US, now questioning whether that relationship still serves their best interests. From North Korea to Japan, the countries featured in this countdown are not merely reacting to new visa restrictions or foreign policy pivots. They are responding to something far more existential: the feeling that the America they once admired is slipping away. The warmth, the opportunity, and the promise are all clouded by uncertainty, inconsistency, and a growing perception of indifference. The US is not just losing visitors or investments, it is forfeiting goodwill, influence, and soft power that once gave it unmatched leverage across the globe. In today's hyper-competitive, multipolar world, that kind of erosion is not just symbolic, it is strategic. When allies feel ignored, slighted, or misunderstood, they do not just step back, they look elsewhere. The hard question is this: if even America's most loyal partners are now reconsidering their ties, who will still stand with it when the stakes are highest? Is this a passing storm or the beginning of a new diplomatic reality?